packed.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas it's like kind of iconic that you scored one goal.
Oh, and being at the Dell as well, wasn't it? Because it was
I
like.
watched it earlier.
Did you? Yeah.
And it was
thank
the
you.
winner.
It is a
It's
bullet.
half decent,
bullet
wasn't it?
head.
Yeah.
No, it's a very good header.
But there was that like millisecond of like, I think I went, did I just score there? And all the supporters were like, was that Franny that scored? And then it was like, whoa. Yeah,
And do you know what? People, I feel like we need to talk about this at some point, but people still, don't they? I mean, they come up to me and say it, but they're like, I was there when your dad scored.
I was going to say, is it like an I was there moment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
someone that set up one of those little T-shirt stores
about to
outside the
say,
ground.
I'm sure there were T-shirts.
I was there when Franny scored,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Like he had a little line of those going for a few months.
Yeah, there'll be some Saints fans somewhere in their loft that have still got that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's amazing.
I need to get one of those. Mind you, I actually wasn't there. So.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Sport, the podcast that goes beneath the surface with sporting heroes, their highs, their lows, and their inspirations from their journeys. I'm Jim Daly.
And I'm Kenzi Benali, and we'll be speaking to Olympians and Paralympians, Premier League winners, England Netball Roses, rugby stars, and more, all to hear about their achievements and successes.
Joining us on today's episode is a footballing icon, a lost trade in the current game as a one-club man who spent almost his entire 20-year professional career at Southampton FC, making nearly 400 appearances for the club.
Now he's a broadcaster and a keynote speaker, and since retiring from professional football, he's taken on 3 epic ultra-endurance challenges, raising nearly £1.4 million for Cancer Research UK. He also happens to be my dad. Francis Benali, welcome to Beyond the Sport.
Thanks, Ken. Jim. Great to be here with you.
How you doing?
Really good. Yeah, I'm excited about this. It's got that unusual dynamic. Not often Ken's and I get a chance to work together, and just been really excited about coming along today.
I'll just sit back and let you guys chat and catch up. I'm not even needed.
Yeah, it's like sat around the kitchen table, isn't it?
I can ask all the tough questions. That's why this is fun. I can say things other people can't.
Well, speaking of, I want to open with quite a serious question.
Okay.
Who is your favourite child?
Ken's knows that.
I know the answer, and it's Luke, not me. Absolutely not me. You love us both equally.
Of course.
Yeah, the diplomatic answer.
Correct
Totally
answer.
fair. Can we go right back to the beginning? As a youngster, you were a very prolific goal scorer, a forward, playing for England schoolboys, scoring goals. Southampton come along, you're a defender suddenly. What happened? Because no one grows up wanting to be Gary Neville. What happened?
I was no different as a youngster, Jim. You know, like playing football for me, for many, sort of people of my age, was kicking the ball around in the streets with your mates, playing down the park and kicking the ball around in a playground. And that was football right up until I was about 13. I never played for an 11-a-side team until I was 13, got picked up by a local Tiro League side. And as you rightly say, as most youngsters back then, you wanted to be the goal scorer, playing up front, scoring the goals, doing all the exciting stuff. And that was my path in those early years. And, I guess just through fate, really, sort of fast forward into what became my cemented position as a left full-back and then as a centre-half at times as well, purely by chance. I'd made my debut as a midfielder, and I was on the bench for a game, and our regular left-back in the side, a brilliant player called Derek Statham, was injured. The right-back was filling in for him that particular day, and he picked up an injury 10 minutes into the game. And I think the managers just looked at the subs on them, and I was the only natural lefty on the bench. So he said, Franny, can you go and do a job for us today? And I went on, must have done okay. And from then on, it was literally, that was for the rest of my career, staying in that position.
And were you like, oh, fine, I'll do it?
Do you know what, as a teenager back then, it was like any excuse to get on the pitch.
Yeah.
Like I would have played in goal almost, like give me the gloves, give me a big baggy jersey, I'll stand in the goal if it means that I can play. So yeah, happy to do it initially, but quickly then had to adapt my game and my knowledge and experience of the position, because as I say, it was striker, centre forward for years, learning that journey and watching players above me in that position and studying them a little bit, to all of a sudden I'm in a completely different role here. So it was that a little bit of adjustment for a while, but probably from a career perspective, worked out well for me, because in the youth team I was playing alongside Alan Shearer, Matt Le Tissier, Rodney Wallace. We were all within a 2-year age gap, so we had some incredible players playing up front. So the competition was pretty hot. So maybe changing position helped me a little bit.
Shearer clearly learnt a lot from him as well.
Oh, well, this is, I personally think the reason he is the Premier League all-time leading goal scorer is because of what he learnt from you.
Well, who knows? I'm not sure Alan would agree with that, but yeah.
But listen, 389 appearances later, it worked out for you at left back. I think that's safe to say. You're obviously Southampton born and bred, a huge Southampton fan your whole life. So I know better than anyone that you bleed red and white. Jim kind of touched on it in the intro. It's really not something we see very often, somebody staying at one club for their entire career. So what made you want to stay at Southampton?
It was home, Ken's, wasn't it? It always has been for us. And being a boy born and raised in the city, having that love and a passion for the sport, never had any desire to ever go anywhere else. And, throughout my career, we were always in the top flight, whether it was the old First Division as it once was, then it became the Premiership and is now the Premier League. We were always, it's not like I wanted to progress my career to play at a higher level or anything like that. We're always in the top flight of football. So, living around and I guess sort of doing my career within the city where I was born and grew up, around friends, around family, has always been a huge part for me, and still is to this day. We still live in the city, and it's great to be part of that community.
Were there chances to move away? Were you like, I'm staying? No, not happening.
I don't think there was ever a massive sort of interest in, a huge money deal that came in from one of the big sides, Jim, to be honest. But I later found out after I'd retired, I think there was an event I was at, a golf event or something, and the old Wimbledon chairman was there, and I think he said, we tried buying you once. Maybe there was an attempt to join the crazy gang to make it a little bit more crazier in some ways.
That would have been a very different
if that was ever possible. But
we did rack up 11 red cards.
Maybe that's where the interest came.
I think
they
it
thought
probably
I would have fitted in quite well.
Suddenly on their radar,
I think the YouTube clip Franny Benali launches John Fashanu into space is always one that gets sent to me as a joke, and actually just on that, it always makes me laugh because, Dad, I know loads of people love to talk to you about the red cards and your aggressive style of play, but anybody that knows you, anybody that's met you, knows that you cross that white line and this red mist just descended over you, but you are the polar opposite in your day-to-day life. He's such a quiet, calm, kind person, whereas I think anybody that hasn't met you is terrified of you.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say I was different on and off a pitch, Ken's, wasn't I? And I think people ask, where did that come from? And I guess the best way of describing it was it was just that desire to win and that competitive edge inside me. And clearly on a number of occasions I overstepped the mark with either a red card or a booking and stuff like that. But it was, I think it probably goes a little bit deeper than that because, I mentioned some of the players that I played with in the youth team. I quickly realised that I didn't have the same level of talent of players that, within the group that I was playing with, the competition that I was coming up against. I quickly realised that, wow, I've got to separate myself somehow. To this day, I've never ever been drunk. I've never drunk. I've never done anything that I would do that I saw as a young age would affect my body and stop me performing at the level that I thought I was capable of achieving. So fitness, looking after myself in an era where it wasn't really a thing like it is nowadays, separated me somehow to, give me an advantage and perform and compete at a level I wanted to reach.
I think that's incredible commitment because in the 90s, I can't imagine being someone that doesn't drink went down particularly well in the dressing room.
It was a culture, Jim, wasn't it? Drinking back then was a culture, and it was that one out, all out mentality. For me to be a youngster fresh from school as a young apprentice saying I'll have a glass of Coke or water or an orange juice or something like that, was difficult to begin with. But the guys accepted me for who I was and how I sort of approached the game and how I lived my life, and never enjoyed really going out and partying and doing all that kind of thing. I was very much like, right, stay in, get my sleep, very dedicated to what I did, and I guess that helped me a little bit.
I really respect that. I think that's amazing. If only I had the same mentality, but it's
But I think that kind of mentality and that, you know, dedication, commitment is how you had the career you did.
Yeah.
Because I think if you talk about Dad to any Southampton fan, the first thing they'll say is the passion and the commitment that you always showed. You always gave 110% for the badge, and you're the first person to admit you might not have been the most talented, but you would play for the crest on your shirt every time.
Yeah, I felt a huge amount of responsibility, and that was just me putting that on my own shoulders. You know, I felt I was representing everybody that was in the stands or part of the city and the community. You know, being a local player and a local boy, I knew I was fortunate to be out there and wearing the shirt, having the badge on my chest, and made me extremely proud. But I also felt that responsibility that I was representing them. So at the very minimum, I felt I've got to give everything. So I had bad games, I made mistakes. I wouldn't have been as talented as others, but like I say, I felt I had a responsibility to give every single ounce of effort and commitment that I could give to the team and the shirt and the supporters. So at the very least, I could walk off knowing I'd tried my best. And that's all I ever did.
On a more serious note, can you talk us through your thoughts behind the tash?
Oh, don't get me started on the tash.
Sure, we can get a photo of it.
Yeah, hope no, please don't dig out a photo of the tash. Even your mum, my wife, would say, just shave it off. Like, it'll grow back in no time. But I used to go, no, this looks good, you know.
How did you ever think that looked good? You did Movember recently, actually, didn't you? And
It came back.
Yeah, got it back, and it was a bit cringe, wasn't it? Yeah.
You look younger now. He's like Benjamin Button, honestly. Mum and Dad genuinely look, they're like fine wines. They look so much better now. The tash was never a good idea.
But there was quite a few players in the early 90s had the tash.
It was a thing.
Nigel Martin
back
had
then.
it,
Yeah,
David
it was a
Seaman.
thing.
So it was a
Yeah, there was
thing.
a few impressive ones around, wasn't there? It was an interesting story, actually. Graham Souness signed for the club as a manager. I mean, everyone that knows his playing days, he was a formidable opponent to come up against. And he was no different even when he joined Southampton as a manager. But when he arrived at Southampton with his impressive moustache, the club was only big enough for one. So that was when mine went. That was when I actually shaved it off.
Was it really?
Yeah. When Graham Souness arrived at the club, I thought, I'm not competing with him or that.
Of all the tashes,
mine
I
goes.
can't.
Yeah.
God
mine's
bless
gotta
you,
go.
Graham.
Yeah.
Thank you, Graham.
That's incredible. It says here that you played once with a broken arm, going back to that kind of commitment. Is that true?
Yeah, remember it well. The pain's still in the memory bank somewhere. I think it comes back to, you know, a mindset and an attitude of not just myself, but players of that era. You know, like nowadays we see players rolling around, feigning an injury, trying to influence the officials maybe to win a free kick or a penalty. It was almost like the complete opposite in my area. You did everything within your powers not to show that you're either in pain or injured or show that as a sign of weakness. So you do everything to stay on your feet and not be on the ground. And I guess that was part of my makeup as well, you know, in the way that I played with the aggressive style. I went up for a challenge. It was at Filbert Street, Leicester City away in a Premier League game. And I went up for a challenge for a header, and I remember my forearm clattered into the opponent's back of his head, and my forearm basically just snapped. I heard it, the pain I was in.
You heard it?
Yeah, and so I knew I'd broken it. But immediately my mindset was like, stay on the pitch, don't go off. And I played for half an hour with a broken arm, and you know, I knew I'd broke it, and just didn't want to, you know, almost like use that as an excuse to come off or let the team down or let the supporters down. So yeah, I guess it was a mindset kind of thing, but yeah, it was pretty painful, and I guess looking back on it, pretty stupid really.
Honestly, he is just another level. I've heard that story so many times, it always goes through me. And I remember you could feel the pins in your arms, couldn't you?
Yeah, even now, like there's
word.
you know, a steel plate in there with about 7 or 8 screws holding it all. Well, not that it needs holding together now, but when it got fixed, I actually, when I first had the operation, I started the recovery process, and of course there's that frustration as a sports person. You want to get back training and playing again. And because I wasn't physically in any pain, you know, I'm sat around the house a little bit. You would have obviously been a young little girl, and I'm thinking, well, I'm getting fidgety. I've got to do stuff. You know, there's chores around the house to do, and it was winter time. And I thought, oh, I need to rake the leaves in the garden. So I went out one day, and I'm raking the leaves, thinking, let's get this job done. And I sat down that night, and I thought, God, my arm's really aching. And anyway, I went and explained that the next day to the physio at the club, and they sent me for another x-ray. And by doing the raking action the day before, I'd snapped the plate that was in my forearm, and basically had to go in and have it operated on again to have another plate put in, a thicker plate. And you know, when you think one of those stupid things like setting myself back with the recovery, but yeah, you know, it's still in there, and thankfully had no problems since.
But the lawn looked great.
The lawn looked good. It was a tick in the box, one of my chores, but yeah, not good from a recovery process.
Anyone that knows Dad, joking aside, Mum and Dad's lawn looks like Wimbledon. It's impeccable. So that is very important.
Okay.
I like a stripe.
You do like a stripe. You can tell he's a former footballer because
I love
it is
that. I've always wanted a stripe in our garden.
Oh, it's a beautiful stripe. Dad, you kind of touched on some of the players you came through the academy with. You mentioned Graham Souness as one of your managers. You played with and against some amazing players under some great managers. So talk us through some of those.
Yeah, you know, every opponent, people thought who the hardest or most difficult opponents, or was there, who did you like playing against if it was an easier game? There was no easy opponent. I always found teams, the opponents, difficult to come up against somehow. Played with some incredible players, as you say. You know, Matt was probably the most talented footballer I ever played with, an absolute genius. Physically wise, Jimmy Case was probably the ultimate warrior that I played with or against. Never saw him lose a battle on the football pitch. Tough as they come, but a great minder of his teammates. You know, when we were all youngsters coming through, he's that senior pro within the dressing room, and took it upon himself to look after all of us as we were breaking through. But yeah, you know, so many incredible, I guess being a defender, you know, ultimately there would have been strikers that I was tasked to mark. Jurgen Klinsmann, Eric Cantona, Alan Shearer when he left the club, and obviously played for Blackburn and Newcastle. And I guess the ultimate, probably the most difficult of opponents that I came up against in every sense would have been probably Ian Wright. I'd say for me the most difficult opponent. He was a complete pain in the butt. You know, he'd constantly be in your ear, he'd be telling you things, trying to get in your head, telling you how bad you were, how useless you were. But a fabulous footballer as well. Probably, you know, the most difficult opponent to play against, the goals that he would score, his ability to stand up to any physical or verbal intimidation. He was willing to dish that back in more than what you'd dish out. And that made him the most difficult player to come up against for me. You know, he's a tick in every box.
Well, Ian, you now got to come on. Write a reply to come on the show and respond. Thanks for saying Ian Wright as a Palace fan. That means a lot to me. I'd say probably the best player that you probably played with and trained with, I'm guessing, is probably Ali Dia.
Oh, blimey, yeah. Well, for anyone that hasn't heard the story, Ali Dia was, you know, supposedly George Weah's cousin. George Weah apparently phoned the football club and said, you need to give my cousin a trial, and he rocked up. And as club captain at the time, I used to often sort of pick up some trialists or new signings to take them to the training ground, help them bed into the city that I knew everything about, and make that process smooth for them. But I remember picking him up from the hotel, taking him to the training ground on the first day, and he told me this whole George Weah's my cousin story.
Oh, he stuck to it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I bought it as well, like everybody did, thinking, oh, that's interesting, good luck, hope it goes well for you. Ran into and from the training ground for a few days, but bizarrely, just through sequence of events, we had injury, crisis, we were at the real bare bones. There was a reserve game that he was supposed to have played in that got cancelled or called off. Oh, right. So no one could really see his real level of ability. And then the next thing, he's been registered because of this injury crisis in the group that was starting a competitive
training then, sort of like,
so. Yeah, it was one. You know, you used to look at any players that came in that were on trial or, you know, potentially going to sign, And you just as a player, you knew straight away. I remember Marion Pahars coming in and looking at him thinking, my word, this is a player.
Yeah.
And he turned out to be a great signing for us, fabulous footballer. Went on to manage Latvia as well. But what a player, what a striker, quick feet, skillful, scored incredible goals. Not many people nutmeg Jaap Stam at Old Trafford and then score a goal. Which just said it all about him. But then Ali Dyer was like, oh, he's not the best. But next thing, he's playing a first team game at the Dell. And I think, again, coming back to Graham Souness at the time, I think he was on for a period of time, and it was like, we need to get him off. Get him off the pitch. So the sub came on and was subbed. It was one of those. And then he just disappeared. I think, without trace. So, yeah, one of those bizarre, probably almost like the perfect storm for him. Everything fell into place that enabled him to play in the game. But, yeah, probably not a story that Graham's too keen on.
I think he gets asked quite a lot about it. It's one of my favourite stories. The quote, Matt Le Tissier did a quote afterwards saying, during that 20 minutes on the pitch, he was everywhere the ball had just been. Such a good quote.
I think he had a chance to score. And imagine if he had scored. I scored one goal in nearly 400 appearances. Imagine if you're on a level with Ali Dyer on your goal scoring level.
Actually, we've got to talk about the goal, really, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, nearly 400 appearances, one goal at the Dell. I mean, it's one of those iconic moments for Saints fans where they say, I was there when Franny scored. So what are your memories from such a special moment in your career?
As you just touched on, Kenz, it stands out for many reasons. The fact that I was scoring a lot of goals in the youth team and then changing position, and the fact that it actually got to a stage at Southampton where even if I crossed the halfway line, Saints fans would start shouting, shoot! And that was really starting to get in my head a little bit, and it was like, this is becoming a bit of a thing. And I thought, I played for close on 10 years, I think, in the first team at this point, and hundreds of games, and I still hadn't scored. And Leicester City come along that particular day, and I don't know why, because I shouldn't have been up for a set piece like that. And a close teammate and friend, Matt Le Tissier, swung a free kick into the box. I was somehow in the 18-yard box. The Leicester City players probably looked across and thought, well, it's only Franny. We don't need to pick him up. He won't score. And the ball came to me with quite a bit of accuracy and pace as Matt could deliver. And I just thought, just get a good connection on it, head it back across goal. And somehow it flew in off the underside of the bar. And then there was just this stunned silence for a millisecond, wasn't there? I think I was like, I think I've just scored. And then the crowd was like, was that Franny that scored? And then the whole place just erupted, and I stood there screaming, I think, ran off and got bundled on by all my teammates. Magical moment for hopefully a lot of people, but especially myself, given there was only ever one.
It's a great header. Do you ever, when no one's around, get the laptop out and just get on YouTube and just have a little watch?
Get the phone out,
Reminisce.
Working as a speaker as well, I do joke sometimes about, if I talk about the playing days a little bit in some of my talks and incorporate that, so that there is a temptation to just play my goal on loop for about 45 minutes. So here we are, let's just take a look at this.
To be fair, it comes up every year, doesn't it? I think on the date that you scored, Southampton post about it, and then I think every time we play Leicester, it gets resurfaced somehow. So we do get to enjoy the viewing quite often, don't we?
It's nice there was one. It's nice there was at least one.
At least there was one. Dad, football's changed so much since you were playing. How have you seen the progression of the game, I guess, in terms of coming through the youth system, and how you'd compare that to now? Because I know that you used to kind of get in the dressing room, you were cleaning boots and things, weren't you? That's a bit of a dying culture now, isn't it?
Massively different to how it is nowadays. Yeah, I came through in an era, along with all my colleagues, where, you couldn't sign for a club. That's a big difference now until you're 14 years of age. You could train with the club and things like that, and still play with your school, still play with your local side. Players now we see getting picked up 6, 7, 8 years of age in academies, don't they? So they're being exposed to a professional environment and getting good coaching from a young age, which is great. But it's so early in a youngster's career path or journey in football, isn't it? And there's probably pressures and things like that. So I think that's probably not a good thing in some ways for the modern game. I was still playing at school and in the playground at that sort of age. But yeah, we were doing jobs on a daily basis, looking after pros, cleaning the toilets, cleaning the showers, you know, making sure kit and boots were ready for your pros on a daily basis. We had a real grounding under a youth team manager called Dave Merrington at Southampton. Those 2 years were a massive, rapid education rise. We were developing as players, developing as young men, and the standards that he set on and off the pitch. I think if you asked anybody that came through that era of football, especially at Southampton, and worked with Dave, you know, he installed in us sort of standards, levels of respect and knowledge about everyday life. I think that hopefully stood us in good stead as young footballers, but also as good people within the community. And I guess that's always been a big part for me to give back as well. Yes, we wanted to carve out those careers as young players, but there was also those other qualities as, you know, hopefully a good friend, a good relative, you know, hopefully in the future as a husband and father, you know, all these things that I guess are big parts of my makeup and life that were you know, really ingrained in us as young men growing up at that time at the football club.
I think respect is the word that you said there that I thought. It's like a respect for the game, a respect for your fellow pros, respect for people in the game. So I guess in a way he was kind of a bit of an early mentor.
Oh yeah, very much so. You know, a massive influence. Can't underestimate it. You know, not just on me, but many others that came through the system at that time. And Southampton were quite a conveyor belt of producing players. Not just our era. You know, it's before then. You know, Danny Wallace and many others came, you know, through the system, and it carried on beyond our era as well. You know, and I guess, you know, Adam Lallana, Luke Shaw,
Gareth
Bale,
Bale,
Theo Walcott. So many over the years have come through, and we've got Tyler Diblin in the current side now. You know, as the latest crop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, you know, I'm proud to have been a small piece of that jigsaw and journey through the football club.
They only produce the best in Southampton. Only the best.
There's a stamp on us. There's a Southampton stamp, isn't there?
Absolutely. Sure. Dad, you mentioned there that Dave Merrington kind of installed that importance of giving back, and I know how much that means to you as a person. So I guess that leads us really nicely onto everything you've done post-football, because you have raised nearly £1.4 million for Cancer Research UK, which blows my mind every single time I think about it. You've taken on 3 absolutely insane ultra endurance events. So take us back to, I suppose, when this idea was born, and we'll start off by talking about the first challenge.
Yeah, it was fitness, as I touched on, has always been a huge part of my professional career, but also just my life. You know, I've always wanted to stay active, and being in football, I think you've always had a goal to work towards. So, you know, it's like being in the team for the next week or staying in the team, whatever it means. So there's always a short-term goal within professional sport. That wasn't there after retiring. So all of a sudden, you know, for all of us nowadays, doing some exercise, going to the gym, whatever, you know, is okay to a degree. But for me, being a goal-driven target helped. So I ran the 2006 London Marathon, loved that. Maybe that planted a little seed to do the more sort of longer distance stuff. But I felt almost like a little bit of a desire and an itch within inside me to do something beyond anything I'd ever experienced physically and mentally in professional football. And that manifested with, I guess, coming up with the idea of running to every Premier League football stadium in 2014. That was the concept and the idea. I thought, well, that's going to push me beyond anything I've done, and had no idea how far it was, didn't realise what it would take to actually do it. And when we mapped it out, it was close on 1,000 miles for those 20 clubs that particular season. So that was a bit daunting at the time, but to make it a real challenge for me, I was running anything between 40 and 50 miles every single day for 21 consecutive days.
Oh my word.
So it was almost getting on for 2 marathons a day every day for 3 weeks, which was a real challenge physically and mentally, yeah.
Was that a bit much?
You're not the first to ask that, Jim. Yeah, I mean, it was extreme, but I wanted it to be extreme. There's 2 reasons for it. It was, one, wanted to make a huge difference to a fantastic cause. And you know, when I had no idea, when I sat down with the Cancer Research UK team, and they said, well, what are you hoping to raise for us? And at that point, I didn't have a fixed number. I thought it's a big challenge. want to make a big difference if we can. Let's pick a big number. And £1 million just popped into my head. I thought, I'd like to raise £1 million. And that's how it came about. So I didn't realise how big a sum of money that actually is to raise through fundraising, especially when you're almost doing it individually, or as we were as a family, a small network of people. And it took ultimately 3 challenges to get there. I think at the end of the first challenge, it was sat at around about £265,000, wasn't it? And which is still a huge sum of money, and so grateful to raise that kind of money and the support we had to get there. But the day after that, I woke up of that first challenge, I was so relieved not to have to run that day. But immediately I knew that there'd be another challenge, because I wanted to get to that £1 million, and ultimately it took 3 of them to get to that target.
You were very lucky that Exeter weren't in the Premier League.
Oh,
wow.
Thank goodness for that, honestly.
But I bet when you're mapping it, you're like, wow, Newcastle's quite far away.
Do you know what? Obviously, I was there for literally every step, and I, to this day, have absolutely no idea how you did it. But every single time we would say to Dad, that's enough. Just, get in the car, just have a break. And we said that so many times. And Dad always said, no, I've got to remember why I'm doing this. There's so many people that, need me to do this, and raising money. And you were so obsessively focused on it. And like Dad said, when we finished, we were all elated that you had raised so much money. But Dad was like, I'm not done. And, then the challenge number 2 was born. So tell us about that one.
Kenzi, you're going to hate question 6. It says, what's the next challenge?
I don't want to get there. We're not even going to ask that question. I've deleted that off my iPad.
There was always going to be the next challenge, Ken's, wasn't there? And I guess that was a dilemma for me and us as a family, wasn't it? How do we raise that bar again to, encourage sponsors to come on board? We wanted the costs of the challenge to be covered. There was accommodation, there was fuel for the vehicles where we were moving around the country, there was food. So didn't want people donating to, costs to come out of their donations. So we had incredible support with sponsors, but you think, how do we raise the bar? Someone said, why couldn't you have just done like a 5K or something and built up, to what you did? We hit the ground with a pretty big first challenge. So the second one was a football theme again. I ran a marathon every single morning. Then we added a second discipline.
Yeah,
it was almost like a bit of a warm-up. And then I added a second discipline of adding the cycle, the bike. So finished the marathon, get changed into my cycling gear, and cycle a minimum of 75 miles every single day by going to all the Premier League grounds this time and Championship clubs. So it was covering a distance of 100 miles a day, every day for 14 days, going to all 44 Championship and Premier League football grounds. That was the second challenge.
I'm just struggling to take it all in.
Are you exhausted?
Yeah.
Do you know what? And as well, I think what really blew me away, it wasn't just watching Dad do it. I actually shared a room with the physio. Her name was Kelly, and sports therapist. She was absolutely incredible, an amazing member of the team. But of course, she was treating Dad before he was heading out and pounding the pavements. And sometimes Dad was in the room at 4 a.m. Now, obviously, I wasn't the one taking on the challenge. I was still exhausted. Now, I'm not saying that for poor me. I'm saying that in a way to kind of, I suppose, make people realise even more, we weren't doing anything. We were following you, and it was exhausting. You were doing it. You were in our room at 4 a.m. receiving treatment. Sometimes you were leaving still in the dark to enable you to get the mileage in. I mean, physically what you did was astonishing, but I don't know how mentally you even got through that.
I guess an answer to that, Ken's, would be like the purpose. And any of us can have a reason and a purpose that drives us for whatever reason it could be. It could be family, it could be a personal scenario. With us then, it was the fundraising, and as you touched on, especially, there's no bad causes, there's so many great causes out there, but we were raising money for people affected by cancer, and it touches so many, doesn't it? So, we knew people, we'd been touched by it as a family, like so many have. So there was always that purpose and a reason to doing it, and that's largely what drove me. Yes, there was an element of what are my boundaries, what are my limits, what am I capable of pushing myself to, and that was part of an intrigue personally, but the fundraising side was a huge part, and knowing people that have been affected by it, meeting people on a daily basis, people coming out, weren't they, and showing their support for what we were doing, and yet you're hearing their stories, and that was very motivating on a daily basis for me to think, okay, I'm going through pain and discomfort, but you're on a whole different level. Yeah. So my pain might not last forever, and who knows what the outcome. You've got the uncertainty of an outcome maybe with your diagnosis or whatever. So, and quite often it would have been a terminal diagnosis. So, how can I complain and moan about what I'm going through when you're hearing people's stories like that? So, yeah, every single bit of my being and my mindset at times, or my feelings, was every morning like, I want to stay in bed. I don't want to get up and go out again today. But when you've got those kind of reasons and purposes pushing you, say it made it easy is sounds a bit contradicting, but it made it easier to get out when you're thinking of those kind of things, and it helped massively.
That's incredible. So this podcast is called Beyond the Sport. This is an example of beyond the sport.
I know. Honestly, he's my dad, and naturally I think he's the most amazing person, but I'm proud of what you've achieved in your career. I'm proud of what you've achieved in life and the person that you are. But honestly, that reached new heights when I saw what you did. And like Dad said, kind of visiting the Cancer Research UK Centre in Southampton and actually seeing what has been done with the money Dad's raised is, it makes me beyond proud. But of course you weren't done there. No. You were going to reach that £1 million, whatever it took. So we came up with this concept of Iron Fran. So tell us about that, because I think the first two challenges were absolutely incredible, but I think Iron Fran reached a whole new level.
Yeah, and those first two challenges, as you saw and witnessed Ken's, they roughed me up good and proper one way or another. And what I was struggling with, and I don't know if there's other athletes or other people that have this problem, but nutrition and fueling my body on a day after day challenge was a massive struggle for me. I was not putting the calories in my body. The third challenge itself, so I was having those problems in the first two challenges, wasn't I? Around everything else, there was injuries, there was and I'd like to recognise the team element of it as well, and this applies, I think, it was very much an individual challenge for me, all of those challenges, but I can say 100% for a fact that I wouldn't have completed them or done them without the team around me, and that team was my family, and you were part of that, as you know. The small support network that we had to enable me to complete it was typified on the third challenge, I think, wasn't it? I'd done a running only challenge over 3 weeks. We'd done a running and cycling challenge over 2 weeks. So when we came up with Iron Fran, for me, the concept popped in my head one day where it's like the ultimate 3-discipline challenge has got to be an Ironman distance triathlon. So to make it a challenge for us, I tried to do 7 and 7. So it was a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, followed by a 26.2 mile marathon every day for 7 days. As it played out, I got to the morning of day 5, and that, as you touched on, Kelly, who was looking after me, everything from treatment, nutrition, injuries, she was in charge of, but she made the biggest call on the morning of day 5 where she withdrew me from the challenge because I was in a complete mess at that point. Wow. Physically, there'd been signs, I'd had a racing heartbeat. I was starting to weave across the pavement during my runs a little bit. There were signs there that were worrying for me, but also the team. And it got to a point where Kelly felt this was beyond her care and I needed to get checked out by doctors at the hospital. And I was devastated. Deep down, I knew it was the right thing because I had nothing else to give. I wasn't eating from the morning of day 1, so I was playing constant catch-up. So I was in a real mess at that point, but devastated thinking the challenge was over. But this is where the team really just typified everything about all the challenges. Whilst I was at hospital, Lucy, my swim coach, did the 2.4 mile swim.
Oh, wow.
The team had a huddle and a discussion that they were going to continue the challenge in my absence. Andrew, my close friend, did the cycling element of it. Luke, your brother, and my son, did the first marathon, and others dipped in and out and did their part, ran maybe a mile or much more to complete the next 2 days to enable me to get some rest, get checked out, and I managed to come back on day 7. So personally, I did 5 and 7, but as a team, we'd completed the 7 and 7, and tipped over that £1 million fundraising mark. So, yeah, you know, individual challenges are out there, and I guess mine was an individual challenge, but the team element of it replicates sport, it replicates business,
100%.
it replicates family,
100%.
that support network. You need a team around you, whatever your team looks like in a family, work, sporting environment. We all need it, and I recognise 100% that everything that we achieved, there was the individual side of it, but I can't underestimate the importance of the team
That's
side.
beautiful.
You need a team, but you need a leader. And I think this is what was amazing to witness. Naturally, from a family perspective, we were so deeply concerned watching the trouble Dad was getting himself to, and voluntarily as well. I think that was what was so distressing for us, because we knew what he was doing. I mean, on day 4, Dad came in to the camper van we had where he would get changed and refuel to jump on the bike, and he was slipping in and out of consciousness. And I said to Mum, how can we send him back out there? But the trouble is, you try and, you know, hold a guy down like Dad, it's not possible. And Dad was so determined and so focused until, as he said, he was medically withdrawn by Kelly, he refused. And even on that day when Kelly was saying, you've got to go to the hospital, there's the most hilarious clip at God knows what time in the morning, and Dad just goes, shall I just get in the pool? Like, shall I just try? And, you know, you just didn't want to give up.
But I think that showed my mindset, Kenz, you know, like I and how I was not making sense. You know, Kelly gave me this big 10-minute or so talk, didn't she, why she was withdrawing me. And my first response was exactly that. Shall I get in the pool then? You know, I wasn't in the right mind space at all whatsoever. I was, and a decision had to be taken out of my hands at that point, and it was the right one.
But you'd inspired not just us as a family. We had people, you know, coming off of the streets, people who weren't football fans, people who didn't know Dad before this. And as you say, they were joining the marathon leg, you know, so we got those 2 days done. And you mentioned how important that team is, but because we had you as the leader, the shining light, I suppose, you'd inspired people that were saying, I've never ran before, but I wanted to join you for a kilometre, you know. So
That's
we
amazing.
had this incredible knock-on effect. Not only was Dad doing great things in terms of raising an enormous sum of money for an amazing charity, but I think what you probably underestimate is actually the impact you had on people's lives in terms of just encouraging them to get out and do something, be active. And that was honestly an incredible thing to witness as well. And then, as you say, you came back for day 7 to complete your 5 and 7, and that was an incredible day because we finished at the Guildhall in Southampton, didn't we?
Yeah, and I didn't know what the finish line was going to look like that particular day. You probably did as family and the support team, but that was kept from me on a particular day. So I knew there'd be a finish line of sorts coming back into the Guildhall Square in Southampton, and it was just a magical sight, turning the corner and just seeing the crowds and the people that had come out to show their support, and the relief that it was over, I think, as well. And we shortly, a few days later, went over the £1 million mark, didn't we? But yeah, the most incredible journey. And I guess, you know, there are many lessons that I've learned, you know, because there was that intrigue. And I guess one of the big things that I took from doing the challenges was how, you know, stepping outside a comfort zone is good for all of us in many ways. And, you know, and doing things that sort of push you, it take you out of that comfort zone, make you uncomfortable, make you active. And what we're actually capable of doing. You know, I think all of us probably have, you know, they're either external noises or sources that put limiting beliefs on any of us on what we can achieve, either individually, or you say that I was told it was impossible to do some of those challenges. And there's an element in your brain that thinks, well, okay, well, what do you know that I don't, that gives you that opinion? But there was also that part of my brain that would say, I'll prove you wrong. Yeah. I'll show you that I can do it. And with the support, with that purpose, stepping outside that comfort zone, that mentally, there's the physical side of doing these kind of things, but mentally is a huge part on anything to do with this kind of thing, and how having a reason and a focus and a mindset that can push you beyond anything that you felt was capable, or others, as well.
If you do need help putting calories on, come to me. I can. I've got a lot of experience in that world.
Trust me, we tried everything.
Help.
We stopped at an ice cream van one day, didn't we? Because that was the only thing we could get you to eat on one of the challenges.
It was quite a, and again, coming back to the team element, that was crucial for me on that particular challenge, wasn't it? On the first challenge, I wasn't eating. I think we were midway through the challenge, and everyone was clearly getting concerned about me. I'd had a bit of a breakdown moment, sat in the ice bath where you knelt alongside me and asked me how the day went, and I basically burst into tears and we hugged one another.
And I don't think I've ever seen you cry like that. It was such a shock.
Well, I guess physically and emotionally, I was at that break point of the challenge, and you asking me the question, I just burst into tears, and it was one of those moments where quite easily things could have gone wrong, or I could have quit and give up, but having those nearest and dearest to you made the difference, because I wasn't eating for a few days at that point. But as a family, you thought, we know Fran can eat ice cream any time of the day, no matter how he's feeling, what he's doing, he
guilt-free
will
ice
eat
cream.
ice cream. Exactly. But the story wasn't there, that when we've got an image of it somewhere where I think another key member of the team, a guy called Dino, who's a director of the company that we approached on the first challenge to support us financially, but came on board as our route manager, but basically all-round former military man, great on maps.
He was amazing.
Just a brilliant personality to have, a kick up the backside when everyone needed it, but also lighten the mood by doing something daft to give us all a laugh, to pick up the mood when we needed it as well. But he just disappeared this particular day, didn't he? When I think someone mentioned Fran likes ice cream. Maybe that'll trigger his appetite again. And anyway, I'm running along midway through the challenge. I remember it being a long straight road, and in a little lay-by, it was like seeing a mirage in an oasis, like in a desert. I've been running all these miles. I thought, is that what I think it is? And as I got closer, I thought it is. And there's a photograph of me rocking up in there. Dino had disappeared, I think, and he'd flagged down an ice cream van, told them what we were doing, and managed to persuade him to pull in on this little lay-by of the road I was running along. Wow. And I literally just hugged the ice cream van, and I'm just smiling. We all had an ice cream, didn't we?
So good.
And that triggered my appetite, and it gave me my appetite to start eating again. So just something so personal that
ice cream is the answer.
Yeah.
Ice cream or sweets, what I'd like with a sweet too.
Don't even get started.
I've got a theory that everyone in football knows at least one person called Dino, and this is confirmation of that.
He's our Dino.
He's an amazing Dino. He is an amazing Dino. I just quickly want to add, I know I joked about deleting the question about the upcoming challenge or a potential upcoming challenge. It was kind of tickling me when you were talking about the last 3 challenges, because you kept saying we had to do more challenges because we wanted to raise £1 million. You have now, quite by some margin, surpassed the £1 million mark. We're nearly at £1.4 million. And I think, if you're being honest, there is a little itch to potentially do something else, as much as that pains me to say it.
I think, I'd like to explore more boundaries again in a way, and seeing the impact that doing these challenges and the fundraising as well, and the support we've received is brilliant. And I just like the idea of hopefully inspiring someone and making a difference to people's lives in one shape or form. And there's, I guess, just as an individual, I'd like to test myself again somehow. I'm obviously getting older. Injuries have been a bit of an issue in recent years, so I'm a bit mindful about that and the impact that's going to have on my body in the long term. And I've been told a few things, if I'm planning to go out and do that kind of stuff again, then there's going to be repercussions. So it's managing that desire to want to do something again, but also wanting to be around the grandchildren, your daughter and my son's little boy and daughter as well. I want to be an active and have a big say in my grandchildren as well, and doing active things. So it's getting that balance, I think. But you're right, there is a a little itch in there
Why
somewhere.
can't we do a family bake sale? Let's just do a bake sale.
Okay, well that's a good start.
I think
Be like
that's...
cakes.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
We've peaked. Let's just do a bake sale. We want to keep you in one piece, please. I'm not sure.
I'm actually doing little bits and pieces. Say little bits and pieces. I'm an ambassador of Southampton Football Club now, and it's brilliant to have that connection with the football club now beyond my playing days. I'm also an ambassador, as you are, Kenz, but also a trustee for Saints Foundation, which I love that connection, having an impact on the people that need it within the city. And you've seen the programmes that they run and heavily involved with that as well. And just having an impact and making a difference on people's lives and giving back. I've been in a fortunate position to have fulfilled a career that I've always had a dream to do, and being in a position within my stage of life and the family and the good things that I've been able to have. Not everybody gets that, and to be able to make a difference to people's lives in that sense is amazing. So I'm going to be taking on a 30-mile trek. A 30-mile trek in the summer.
This is mild to what he's done in the past. I'm okay with it.
But I love these challenges because they're collective ones as well.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to walk with people. You can walk and talk, and I didn't have that. It was very much an individual challenge, is what we've done in recent years. But these ones where there's the participation side of it, there's additional fundraising that they can do, and there's a real camaraderie, which I love about it. So yeah, that's on the horizon for me in the near future.
All right, I'll pre-book the ice cream van.
Yes.
Please do.
And come to the bake sale.
I'll come to the bake sale. Franny, before we take a quick break, I know you've brought in a little bit of memorabilia for us.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, we've got the shirt that I actually made my debut in hung up here. So that's something memorable for me. But I've brought one more shirt, and there's a little bit of a story behind it, Jim.
Yeah.
We actually said, speaking off air, didn't we, that just bizarrely through a unconnected, bizarre sequence of events, you think you were actually at the game that I've got this piece of
your last ever
memorabilia.
game for Southampton.
Yeah, I not many players get it, but I knew when was going to be my last game playing in a Saints shirt, and it was a really emotional night. The then manager Gordon Strachan said, I'd like you to play in this game to show your appreciation to the supporters and vice versa for your career and your time at the club. And at the end of the game, I remember trying to pick you out in the crowd and the family and give them a little wave, and I'm thinking, this is the last time I'm going to wear the crest and the shirt in a match. So it was very emotional. I remember just almost wandering around the pitch, being a little bit in a daze, and a young player came up to me and said, would you like to swap shirts? And I played in an era where you didn't swap shirts back then. Everyone does it now, or players give shirts away. We didn't do that, and Michael Ballack was the big star of the Bayern side at the time. And I remember a few of my teammates trying to swap shirts with him, but this youngster walked up to me, and for those that are probably listening to this podcast but maybe not seeing it, I'm holding up one of the Bayern Munich shirts now, and it's a huge thing. It's like a duvet, isn't it? The size of it. It was pretty big as they were back then.
What size is that, XL?
I think it probably is, but I didn't realise at the time when I swapped shirts with this youngster that fast forward a few years later, when I was sat watching the World Cup final in 2014, I think it was, when Germany's side beat Lionel Messi's Argentina, and I thought back to the shirt that I swapped, and the shirt that I actually swapped with was with a young Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Wow.
So it was a pretty cool bit of memorabilia, I think, to sort of round up my career and life in football. So yeah, that was a nice piece of kit and memorabilia that I keep within my collection. That sometimes I show at my talks and things if I dig it out and like to share it.
Clearly, game recognises game.
Absolutely. Doesn't get any better than FB. All right, I think we're going to take a short break and we'll be back shortly.
This episode is powered by Shoshin.
Shoshin are here for the up-and-comers, the never-giver-uppers, the risers and the fallers, fueling the journey of all athletes with quality products.
For every kick, hit, pass, Shoshin are there. Sharing your passion for nurturing athletes. Together, we can empower the next generation of athletes, one game at a time.
Ready to play. Set to improve. Shoshin.
To find out more information on Shoshin and where to purchase their amazing products, visit www.shoshin-sports.com. Dad, we've got to talk about the goal. Nearly 400 appearances for the club. You scored one goal, but it was a thing of beauty, and we've actually dug it out of the archives. So we're going to have a little look at it here. And if you could, please talk us through it.
Oh, well, it sticks in my mind, obviously, Ken's. Matt Le Tissier, close friend, putting a great ball into the box. And I thought, just get it on target. And it was a pretty good connection. Went in on the underside of the bar. And then, as you saw, teammates just piling on. And, I was actually stood under that bundle just screaming. I went completely crazy.
Can we go back? Because technically, if you play it again, Le Tissier knocks it in. It's a lovely header. But if you look closely, Matt Oakley actually makes it 2-0. There's a second.
Hey, there we go.
That's actually
just making
2 in
sure
1.
it was in there. Yeah.
Thing is, it is one of those moments that Saints fans still talk about to this day and say, I was there when Franny scored.
Yeah, I think there was a little line. Could we keep it on loop for the for the rest of the podcast? No, I think there was a little run of I was there when Franny scored T-shirts being sold outside the stadium by someone at the point. But yeah, I'm pleased I got one, and I'm pleased it was at the Dell. Because to score in front of all the Saints fans meant that much more. And if it had been away from home, it wouldn't have maybe had the same impact. But yeah, it's funny actually, the amount of people that do say I was there when Franny scored. Over the years that people have said it, maybe the Dell had about 50,000 people in there that day. But yeah, memorable day.
It's a great goal as well. Yeah, if you're going to score one, it's a bullet header.
I guess so. At least it wasn't, just a little tap in.
Exactly.
Jim, was it?
Exactly.
All right, you've milked this enough. You've seen this too many times now. It was a fantastic goal, and I'm proud to say that I was there when Franny scored. So very good memories indeed. We love that. Loving this chat. Dad, so good to have you here with us on Beyond the Sport. It'd be amazing to talk to you now about what you're up to day to day, really. So retired from professional football. We've spoken about your amazing ultra endurance challenges you've done for charity. And of course, now you're a pundit and a keynote speaker. So tell us about that, and I suppose how you found that transition from playing to your speaking work now.
Yeah, no, it's one that's taken a bit of time, actually. I find myself in a place in my life and what I'm doing that's taken a bit of time, and it's been a bit of a journey from retiring from professional football. And I guess that's a dilemma for many people that are, people that are either in the forces, sort of see that transition, coming back into day-to-day life. And for a sports person as well, it's similar in so many ways, because it's like, that's all you've ever known almost.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you make that adjustment? What do you go into in the future? And obviously sort of like still earning a living and things like that. So being in football as a pundit is brilliant to have that connection with the sport still. I absolutely love doing that work. But my work as a speaker as well is something that I've got a real passion for as well. Clearly I've got that football connection and I love working as a pundit, but working as a speaker and hopefully inspiring an audience and helping people in maybe their business life, personal life, just by sharing my story and those lessons that I've learned through a career in professional football, but also the endurance challenges. I truly believe there's a crossover between, business and sport. I speak in companies and organisations, educational groups, going into universities, sports teams. There's so many crossovers between sport and business that, hopefully by sharing my experiences will benefit people that I sort of speak in front of.
I can't believe there's anyone in an audience for your speaking that probably isn't inspired by your story and the things you do.
That's very kind, Jim. I mean, I guess maybe sort of, having touched on before, not having maybe ever been the most talented and where hard work and, application and resilience and all those things we talk about, overcoming setbacks, can, I guess, take you to a position that you want to perform at. I achieved a childhood dream and ambition of playing professional football and for my hometown club, and for as long as I did, and I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, it's nice to hopefully be able to have an impact on people's lives. That's a big thing for me nowadays. To have a positive impact on people. Hopefully I've had that with you as a family, Kenz, and people within my immediate circle, but complete strangers that I've maybe never ever met before. Just being a good human being on the planet and giving back and making a difference, and sharing my story and, you know, things that I've learned with the audiences.
I wish you were my dad if I'm being totally
I've got to
My
admit,
dad's great. My dad's sorry, Dad.
He's the best. He is the best dad ever. I know everybody thinks that, but you hit the nail on the head in that, of course, I'm so proud of him. He's my dad. But I've been to so many of Dad's talks, and when I'm watching people leave and I'm hearing them say how inspired they are, and like Dad said, there are so many parallels between business and sport. So to see the way in Dad's career now he's making an impact on people's lives is just, amazing. And I couldn't be more proud of you. So it's amazing to see. And I do want to touch on, actually, one of your other ventures, I suppose, since retiring is this thing here, your book. You've written an autobiography, which I can vouch for being a real labour of love.
We were very invested in it in a family, weren't we? And you know, there's an interesting story behind it as well. You know, a couple of people have mentioned it. This was a COVID project for us, wasn't it? You know, sort of doing the book. You know, very strange time for all of us, but we ploughed ourselves into that, didn't we? A couple of people have mentioned it in the past, and I never quite felt right to either do it or commit to one. And then it was actually an interview. I was having a chat with Henry Winter one day, and he put it in a different way. You know, a great journalist, and he sort of put it to me in a way. And he asked me about, what about doing a book maybe? And I said no, and I said the reasons why. And he put it in a way to me that shifted my mindset about it, and you know, obviously then committed to it. Got a great guy called Matt Barlow to ghostwrite it, a Sheffield Wednesday fan, but a brilliant person to do it with, and Bloomsbury were the publishers, and it's my story, I guess, and captures, you know, right from day one, being born in the city, my upbringing, my background, what's probably made me the man that I am today, the journey through football, the challenges, but yeah, Matt as the ghostwriter was probably cursing us at times, wasn't he? Because we were so invested in it and I guess we wanted it to be in I guess my words, and I've done an audio version as well, you know, that was quite challenging to record that, you know, the difficulties, the retakes, you know, to get it right, but I guess like anybody, if you're hearing someone's story, you'd want it to be in their voice, wouldn't you? So I was keen to do that, and it's a big chunk of my life that will be on the shelf forever, which is how Henry Winter put it to me, which made me think maybe my story is going to be there for future generations. So and
it's fallen into the hands of some quite big names as well, I think it's fair to say.
There was a connection with the book and the city, but a name so many will know, our former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Was asked what book he was reading in an interview with one of the broadsheets whilst he was still Prime Minister, and he said, I'm reading the inspirational autobiography by Francis Benali.
Wow.
And you know,
that's amazing.
Regardless of anybody, whether they thought he did a good job of running the country or not, he's a brilliant judge of what is an excellent book.
Definitely.
That'll boost sales as well. That's great PR.
It was a real labour of love, though. We, as you say, COVID project, and there was countless Zooms and things. And I don't think there's many people actually that have written a book and had a ghostwriter that have been that fanatical about the way things are worded, because as you say, you wanted it to completely come from your voice, and it really is an amazing read. So it's something that we're all very proud of.
We're very proud of, definitely as a family, and you know, the feedback is good if you know you speak to somebody that's maybe read it, and it's lots of good content out there to read, but hopefully this is my little piece of adding to what is something positive.
It's a great front cover as well. It's a strong photo.
I mean, it's a little bit different from the hardback. You know, there's a couple of different images from the hardback and the paperback, but it seems a little bit serious, that one, actually.
That's like you've just been shown a red card.
That's almost like my...
Well, he's used to that, so...
my glare that I would give a referee in the past.
It is maybe a bit sterner.
Oh, fantastic. Fran, can we take you back to childhood for a bit? Can we go right back?
Okay, this sounds deep.
It does sound deep. Right back to those early days. What was it that made you want to become a professional footballer? Can you remember the moment where you thought, maybe I want this, or I can actually do this?
There was never any one moment, I don't think, Jim. Casting my mind back, it's one of, I guess, my earliest desires, interests, likes, passions. You know, there was always, if there was a football around, I wanted to play. I wanted to have a kick about. Any opportunity that I could as a youngster, I would play. And I didn't play for an organised team until I was 13 years of age, as I maybe mentioned earlier. But yeah, it just, as the years went by, it just grew and developed, and I thought, this is what I want to do. And I guess this is maybe not something to advocate in a positive way for any listeners or youngsters, but you know, I was so driven, that was all I wanted to do. There was no plan B for me.
Really?
And I guess in some ways that's a good thing to have, because you know, you've got no choice but to almost like pursue plan A, if you like. And that was to play professional football, and I'm grateful that I did that. But maybe there should have been a little bit of a backup plan, because for me, going to school was all about sport, PE, being active, playing all kinds of sports, not just football. And that would have been in the playground, before school, after school, in PE lessons, any kind of sport I loved as a youngster. But that's what I was good at. That's what I was excelled at. I wasn't great academically at school. And you know, I guess there were figures throughout my school life that enhanced and helped me along that journey.
Well, it'd be great to hear a bit more about those, because I know
Yeah.
you touched on how influential Dave Merrington was during your academy years at Southampton. I know there's been various other people throughout your life, both in and away from football, that have influenced you. So it'd be great to hear about those.
Yeah, you know, cast my mind back to those early days in primary school. You know, I guess we've all had maybe a teacher, or hopefully had a teacher that has been a real positive role model, or ignited something in us. And there was a gentleman in middle school for me called John Ring, Mr. Ring. I think he was a science and maths teacher, maybe, from my memory, if that's right. But he used to take some PE lessons as well, you know, and I was in his class. And, you know, I got memories of him putting me with, as it was back then, you know, if it was a rounders session that we were doing, he'd put me on the girls' side, you know, to play against the boys, to maybe balance
even it
out
up
a little bit, because I was quite useful at, you know, even at stuff like rounders. But you know, I think he recognised my talents as a sports person, even as a youngster, and encouraged that, and almost gave me that belief and confidence, I think, of you are good at something, and brought that to the fore, and encouraged me to pursue that even more, even at such a young age. So yeah, certainly a personality and a character that sticks out in my memory as being a positive influence on my young years at junior school.
It shows how important teaching is, that nearly everyone, as you say, can point back to one or two teachers, have a really vivid memory of what they look like, what they sound like, their name.
Yeah.
That impact is clearly so massive, and you're talking about Mr. Ring now. It shows the importance of teaching and teachers.
Oh, can't underestimate that, can you? I mean, my son, your brother, is a tutor, you know, and I see the impact that he has on youngsters' lives, and you know, having that, you know, you can have those role models within your life, and it could be family, it could be friends, it could be anywhere in the world, couldn't it? But you know, teachers have such a crucial role to make, and it sort of continued into my secondary school years. You know, as I touched on, you know, I might have had some of my academic subjects thinking, Fran needs to be on his game here and up his game and be better with homework and stuff like that. And there were a few detentions along the years that my academic subjects teachers would give me, but I'd have the sports PE masters that would be trying to get me out of a detention so I could go and play in a school team, you know, for the day, which, you know, was quite an intriguing sort of battle between them. But, you know, I had that continued influence of certain key teachers, even in secondary school, that recognised what I was good at, the positive things. And, you know, even as a football club, the club, I couldn't just be so focused on, you know, football that I could completely ignore the academic side of it. It was important. I still put the effort in, even though it didn't come naturally to me, the academic side. But yeah, any kind of sport, any activity, especially if it was football, I would be out there playing it, doing it for the school.
I think, like, I've got two young kids, and I think like that positive reinforcement is so important at a core age with kids. Like, it's really easy to tell kids, like, need to be better at this, you're not good at this, and then all they hear is I'm bad. It's so important to like reinforce what they're good at. And you had those PE teachers saying, look, you're really good at this. That is so important to young people's self-belief, confidence, and I'm glad that you had those role models at that age.
Can't underestimate it, can you? Because not every child has that either, do they? Not every family has it, a loving family like we are, and close like you are with your children, and you encourage the strengths and sort of build some positivity and confidence in them as youngsters, which is brilliant. Not everybody has that. So, if there's a key role like an individual, a coach, a teacher, can have a massive impact on a youngster's life in the future. If I didn't have that sort of backing, and there was another guy, I guess, in my life that almost like a father figure to me, a gentleman called Leon. I called him Chris. I thought his name was Chris. So it's strange to have Leon / Chris, but was like my mum's boyfriend, for many years, but like a dad to me, because my parents split when I was a baby, so my mum raised me, but I had this positive influence around me, complete fitness fanatic, into all a healthy lifestyle, which clearly rubbed off on me as well. I loved spending time with him. I was almost like stuck to his side. I'd follow him wherever, he was into his fitness, his keep fit, and playing sport and being encouraged by him as well was a massive impact on my early years. So to have that, I look back with fondness, thinking I was fortunate, because as I said, not everybody gets that.
That's amazing.
Do you know what? There's so many things that I know about you. I feel like I know everything, really. And I've interviewed you on many occasions. But you know what? There's one question that we had on our script where I thought, I don't know the answer to that. Okay. And you kind of touched on it there. And I said to Jim, I thought this might be the case, that you never really had a plan B. But if you didn't make it in sport, if football never worked out for you, what would you have done?
Do you know, it is a really good question.
I honestly don't
I guess
know.
in some ways I don't really, Kenz, because it did play out the way that it did. So, many people do have maybe those dreams and ambitions quashed for whatever reason. I could quite easily have not fulfilled my dreams and ambitions to become a professional football player. What would I have done? I genuinely don't know. I really don't know.
You said that.
I said you'd say that.
Maybe I would have pursued a sport. And I know I've done interviews in the past, and I'm just trying to recall maybe when I've been asked something like that in the past. I think I did say, maybe because of those positive influences, Jim, I think I did say something like maybe a PE teacher.
Yeah,
maybe
you would be amazing
going to
at
say that.
Yeah.
Maybe just sort of having a role still within giving back. And
do you
sports.
think it does kind of come full circle? Because it is really common, isn't it, for elite sports people to then go into coaching? And I know you dabbled in that for a short time. Is there an element of that, like wanting to give back, and almost like that role reversal if you've had those role models and then you kind of step into that role yourself?
Yeah, I was club captain at Southampton Football Club for many years. When Alan Ball joined the club as manager, former World Cup winner, the most incredible, passionate, enthusiastic personality, was a big influence on me at that time in my life and career as well. But he appointed me as club captain of the team at that time. And that role within the community, giving back, supporting good causes, organising the players to make appearances and things was always a big thing. So, I guess, I've always wanted to give back and have a role. I've forgotten the question now that you asked.
I can't really remember either.
But giving back has been a big thing.
It sounds like a gratitude sort of thing,
is.
like grateful for like the life you've been handed.
Exactly, yeah, and sort of trying to have a positive impact because and you've experienced the importance of it at some point throughout your career or your life, and I've had that in key moments. And yes, there's the side of it where you've got to do the personal bit and commit to stuff and do the training or whatever it might be, but having those triggers and those key influences along that journey is crucial. I honestly believe that.
Do you know what I think is such a beautiful thing about mentors as well? You talking about Mr. Ring, Leon, Dave Merrington, those people that you look back on and think, wow, you were such an inspiration on my life. I don't think as a mentor you realise at the time. So for teachers or coaches, they're just doing their thing. Like, it's amazing that Mr. Ring is going about his day to day, probably not knowing how much of an impact he's made on your life.
I mean, he always seemed of a fair age, even back in middle schools, and I think he has since passed away, which is really sad. But I think he did know that. I spoke about him in previous sort of conversations in the past over the years, and I think he was aware of the influence that he had on me. So hopefully that gave him some real pleasure and joy. I'm sure it did. Even just being a teacher, teaching students the academic subjects. To know that you can have the kind of impact that teachers or anybody in life can have on somebody is so powerful and meaningful, I think, isn't it? And to be able to do that I love the idea of having that positive impact on people, hopefully.
Are you sort of really realising, I guess, as you play your career, that you're making these people proud? These people that have affected you, these mentors. You're probably making them really proud as you progress your career.
Well, I've got that myself, Jim. Now sat here as a parent. I mean, I'm sat across from my daughter and my son. I'm
that makes it sound
proud.
like Jim's your son.
Wow, what way to
No,
find
you're
out.
not my son unless there's something that I should
So
know.
there's a DNA test happening. I wasn't unaware about.
I knew what you meant.
Well,
I
I
feel
said
like we
earlier
should
I
clear
want you
that
for
up.
dad, so now I just got what I wanted.
Honorary son.
Yeah.
Honorary son.
But again, I guess looking at my background and upbringing, I come from a broken home, and there was things that happened throughout my life, and that moulded me, I guess, as a youngster and a young man, and the man I am today. And that's, I think, hopefully impacted on how I am as a husband and a father and a friend, and wanting to maybe change some things that I experienced in future, for my children.
But it's a cycle, isn't it? Because I'm a parent now, and everything I learnt from you and Mum, I suppose, as my mentors, I now want to give to my daughter. So that's the power of a inspirational role model, because you then emulate that. So it's this beautiful cycle, really,
I guess
isn't
it's
it?
a legacy, ultimately, isn't it? Is what you want to leave and do. I mean, we're here for a short time, aren't we? And we all have had reminders of that, of life, how quick it can be, how fleeting it can be, careers in our lives, but just life in general, how quick it does go. And to have an impact on people is a real meaningful thing. And I've been fortunate to have those role models in my life. Hopefully I am one now, to obviously my family, but others as well, through what I do and what I've done through my life as well. So it's nice to have that bit of positivity, isn't it, and know that you've made a difference to someone.
I love that. I definitely feel like an honorary member of the Benali family as well.
Ah,
You are.
Which is
that's
great.
For
nice.
sure, for
That's
sure.
good.
So as you're, from being a player in the Saints Academy, coaching, and now ambassador, what changes have you seen in I guess Saints Academy, academies in general, over that time?
I mean, football's changed massively, Jim, hasn't it, over the years that I've seen, from breaking through in the late 80s, retiring in the early 2000s. For me, it's gone on to a whole new level now, hasn't it, in every sense. Clearly, so many people talk about the finances and the money in the sport, and that's again on a different level nowadays, good or bad. I think the game's changed massively from a technical perspective from my day. There's more physicality. The way that the games and the rules were applied in my era were enabled you to play in a physical manner, which you don't get in the game nowadays. Lots of positives: the sports science, the medical side of it, the nutrition. I would love to be a player now to tap into that kind of resource that sports people have nowadays. I was doing it in my own way that I thought was right, when there wasn't that support network around or the science behind it. But
I'm going to say it, you were ahead of the game.
You were.
You were ahead of your
to be
time.
fair, for sure.
In some ways, I guess, maybe, but it's and I love it. I love hearing people's stories. You've had people on the podcast already that everyone's got a story. And I think it's just great to share that and learn from people. Even if it's just a little snippet, a little bit of advice that someone can give you. And the impact that we can have. We talk about how being an influence on people. Any one of us, even to a complete stranger, you know, a smile to someone as we're walking past them in the morning, you don't know what that smile can mean to that person because you don't know what's going on in their life day to day. So, yeah, you know, just trying to put out, you know, these ripples of positivity and little snippets can make an impact in the world for sure.
Definitely.
Good vibes only. That's
Definitely.
what we like to say.
We love that.
Positive vibes only.
Definitely.
Dad, what would you say to your 10-year-old self? If you could go back and speak to young Francis Benali, what would you say?
Wow. God,
Don't grow a tash.
Well, yeah. do not grow a moustache. Yeah, that would be one bit of life.
Can I say, what is hilarious is that I think probably at 10 the beginnings were there.
It was, yeah. Like as a teenager, when I said about playing for teams at 13 years of age, an organised side, I used to have this, and this was probably building my character as a youngster because I had parents of the opposing team screaming at me going, there's no way that lad's 12 or 13 years of age, because I did have the beginnings of the tash even back then, you know, and it probably frightened life out of some of the little lads that I was playing against. But yeah, amazing. Don't grow the tash would have been a good bit of advice in the future. But I mean, I don't know. I think on a serious note, it would maybe be, but maybe this is what made me what I am today and things as well. But maybe not to be too harsh on myself. Don't beat yourself too much. You know, I've always been very self-critical, even to this day, but I can remember it from my playing days. I would have finished a game or walked off a pitch and, you know, didn't need anybody to say you didn't play well or you made a mistake. I would know instantly, and I was very self-critical like that. But maybe that helped me become the person and the player that I was, to keep improving, keep working hard. But definitely be a little bit kinder to myself, I think, would be a message in a number of ways. Not get so wrapped up or serious about certain things and worked up about things. Just things will be all right. Things will work out.
Is that part of that elite mentality, though? Because I feel like that constant desire to be better, to do more, seems to be a recurring theme with the successful athletes we've spoken to. You hold yourself to such a high standard that that's almost what drives you. Yeah,
I go along with that and agree with that 100%. I guess if there's, through experience and also time and age, I think you understand a little bit more how that can become maybe not quite such a healthy thing as well. You know, being so driven to do things, and we spoke about that, you know, from a career perspective and the challenges. You know, it can take you into a little bit of a zone that's maybe not particularly healthy or good. So getting that balance, like everything, I think is important. But yeah, certainly having drive and focus things like that is a good thing, but keeping it sort of manageable and healthy as well is an important thing as well.
And you work with the Saints Foundation. What would that be a similar message you would give on to any sort of budding sports stars if they were asking for advice? And I guess, you know, is that a similar message you pass on to teachers in a way to empower them?
Yeah, I'd be like have a positive impact and support anything of people that you're working with or you come into contact with. Encourage the strengths that people have and focus on those as opposed to weaknesses or things that you're not so good at. I know there's ways we can improve and get better at certain things, but especially if you're talking about from a youngster perspective, if you're dealing with youngsters, especially either as a teacher or a coach, you know, focus on the good things that they can do. You know, build them up, you know, and I don't mean it to a point where you give people sort of false hope, but follow the dreams and ambitions for sure. You know, that helped me, I know 100%. And you know, hopefully I've installed that, you know, as a parent as well, to say follow your dreams. You know, anything is possible, and we know there's a real world element to it, that not every dream comes true or everything is achievable, but don't let that stop you for being a lack of trying in the first place, because incredible things can happen if you commit to it, give it everything, and you know, we can often surprise ourselves, I think, with what we can, you know, individual achieve as people.
Well, what
Great
do you
advice.
say? You don't have to be great to start, but you've got to start to be great.
Very true.
Fair,
Yeah, I like it.
Love that.
I like that.
Dad says to me, he said it to me in the car.
Yeah.
So A little bit of a pep talk pre-podcast.
Oh, I love it.
Am I allowed to say this has been my favourite podcast? Am I allowed to say that? Am I?
I'm allowed to say it.
You're allowed to
It's
say
been
it.
my favourite podcast.
It's been so good to have you on. Thanks,
You've
Dad.
been amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
What
you.
an awkward handshake.
Hey, that was it. Let's go on.
I've
We got to do it
never-
better. We got to do. I do one of the, we do one of these.
There we
Yeah.
go.
I've never,
That's more of a sports one, isn't it?
I've never held the hand of one of our podcast interviewees before.
Quite
but
often when we've done things before, we end up like we're very hug, kiss kind of family, aren't we? So it's normally a big hug and a kiss, isn't it, at the end of
Yeah.
it? So the table's stopping us from doing that today, but you certainly wouldn't want a kiss from me, Jim, but I would have given you a hug,
thank
that's
you.
for sure.
But it has been amazing to talk to you. I'm
Yeah,
so
thank
proud of your
you.
story, and
I've
and
loved it.
genuinely, you are such an inspiring person,
Yeah.
not just from a daughter perspective, but everything you've achieved. And we have loved having you here on Beyond the Sport. So, Dad, Franny Benali, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Dad, we've absolutely loved having you on Beyond the Sport. And if you've enjoyed the episode as well, you can head to francisbenali.com and book Dad for a keynote talk.